Okay.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Panati pata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Adinnādāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Kāmesu miccāchāra viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu miccāchāra veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Musāvādā viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Suramēraya majjapamā daṭṭhāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Suramiraya majjapamadaṭṭhāna veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.
recite stanzas to offer all the offerings. I hope that you all would offered offerings to the Buddha in front of the Buddha statue and then took your seats. And let's contemplate on the 9 great qualities of the Buddha to offer all these offerings. First, we're going to recite stanzas to venerate the triple gem, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Veneration to the Buddha. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho. Vichacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu. Anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati. Sattādeva manussanang buddho bhagavati. Veneration to the Dhamma. Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko. Ehi passiko openaiko. Pacchatang veditambu vinyohiti. Veneration to the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Ujupatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Nyayapatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Samiti patipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa pungala. Esa bhagavatu savaka sangho. Ahuneyo pahuneyo dakhineyo. Anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyaketang lukasati. Offering cans. Ganasarappaditena deepena tamadangsina. Tiloka deepang sambundang pujayami tamonudang. Offering incense. Ganda sambhara yuttena dhupinahang sugandhina. Pujaye pujaniyantang puja bhajana muttamang. Offering flowers. Vanne gandhe gunopetang etang kusuma santating. Pujayami munindasya siripada saruruhe. Pujemi buddhang kusumena nena punyena mite nacha hotu mokkang. Puphang milayati yatha idammi Kayo tathaya divinasa bhavang, offering water and medicinal drinks. Adivase tunu bhanti paniyang parikapitang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang. Adivase tunu bhanti gilana pachayang imang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang. Adivase tunu bhanti besachang parikapitang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang. Veneration of all the pagodas of Buddha's relics and the Bodhi tree. Vandami chetiyang sambang sambidhani supatititang saririka dhatu mahabodhing buddharupang sakalang sada yasya mule nisinnuva sambari vijayang aka pattu sabbanyutang satta vanditang bodhipadapang. Apologizing from the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for any mistakes we have done towards the Triple Gem. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami bhanti bhuripanya tathagata. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami dhamma sandittika akalika. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami sangha superipanne anuttara. Aspiration. Imina punya kammene mami bala samagamu satan samagamu hotu yavanibbana pattiya. Aspiration means, in this context, may I be with the wise friends, individuals, until I attain the Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Now it's time for the meditation. So please keep to your postures. Keep your back, head, and neck straight. Put your right palm on the left palm and close your eyes, please. We're going to practice the loving kindness meditation, starting from us. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always meet with success. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May my parents, family members, teachers, relatives, friends, all indifferent persons, and all living beings, including enemies, be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always meet with success. May they also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Okay, so let's contemplate on these aspects of loving kindness and then practice it for a few minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. At the end of the puja, the meditation, we normally share good karmas with the departed people and the deities, devas. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Ittavata cha ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca Bhummatta Deva Naga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Lokasasanang. Akasattha ca Bhummatta Deva Naga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Desanang. Akasattha ca Bhummatta Deva Naga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Mang Parante. Now it's time to worship the monks. I hope Ovini can. He was done.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Silavantam, gunavantam, punyakettam, anuttaran. Dullavena mayaladam, buddha putan namamaham. Silavantam, gunavantam, punyakettam, anuttaran. Dullavena mayaladam, buddha putan namamaham. Silavantam, gunavantam, punyakettam, anuttaran. Dullavena mayaladam, buddha putan namamaham.
Thank you. So we have a new student today, Netul. Netul, please turn on your camera. Okay. And now we are moving on to the veneration of our parents. So please approach your parents and then respect them with the stanzas we reciting together. First, mother. Dasamasi ure katva posesi buddhi karanang ayudighang vassa satang matu padang namamahang. Dasamasayak dumbinda ma hedu amme lekiri kara pova ma dedikala amme nivase budun yai buduhimi desu amme Oba payuga vandimi ma adara ammi. Father, buddhikaru alingitva chumbitva piya puttakang raja majjang supadintang pitupadang namamahang. Neti beri kamak mata nodanina niyayini duk karadara madin ma hedu dayavini. හොඳ දරුවෙකු වෙන්න මට දුන් ඔවාමිනි ඔබ පායුග වඳිමි මා ආදර පියාණෙනි. Okay, children, please come back to your seats. Now I'm going to bless all of you. Abhivadana silissa nichang vadha pachayino chattaro dhamma vadhanti ayuvannu sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha atu nibbana sampatti iminati saminchato. So please prepare to sing the Dhamma school song. Please stand up and then sing the Dhamma school song. Give me a second. Okay. Don't put your hands together. Put down your hands. Okay, please take your seats. Mike, we have a good news from Ovini. She sang a song recently, which is on YouTube.
Oh, really?
About grandma. I think she's missing her grandma. Am I right, Ovini?
Yes.
Would you mind singing a part of that song with us?
Sure. Hande mama evit giyat paugiya kale etaata purpoyak nam natuat mehe lassana sillat natu watat me niwadut paulama pansal yane pane.
Oh, wonderful, right?
That's great. That's fantastic. You're quite talented.
A round of applause to her.
Yeah.
And I think Ovini, you can share that link with all of them so they can see. I mean, that's nice with the music actually. That's really nice. Yeah, with the music.
Thank you.
And she was singing with someone else, I guess, a singer from Sri Lanka.
Maya Damayanti.
Oh, famous Maya. Yeah. So she is missing her grandma who is away from Canada, right? Okay.
Oh, that's a beautiful sentiment. Yes, and Ovini, you have a wonderful singing voice. I hope you'll continue to practice that and cultivate that skill.
Thank you.
Yeah. Over to you, Mike. So that day we did about Animal Kingdom. I don't know. I mean, if you wanna touch back.
Yes. Yeah. So So I apologize for missing the last one. I had to go to the hospital. So I hope you'll forgive me that. It was I learned a very important lesson. When you cook something with bay leaves in it, take them out before you start eating. They're not edible. They're not poisonous, but they you can't swallow them. So I learned that lesson the hard way. I thought, I'll pick around it, but I missed one. Anyway, but I'm okay now. I'm here, and we've covered so far. I was looking again at the structure of this. So we started with the human realm because we're humans, so it's a logical place to start. And so far, we've been walking sort of down the ladder, and we'll continue to walk down the ladder and then jump back up to the top. So that's the structure of that's the way the book laid out the structure. I think that's fine. So having talked about the animal realm, we're going to talk today about the Petas, and in Pali they're called Petas, in Sanskrit Pretas. There are a bunch of different ways to. Sometimes we leave that word untranslated. You probably all know what Petas are, right? If you have never heard of Petas, like raise your hand or something. Okay. Now there is a new student here, right? Like you said, Bhante, Nepal. I see Nepal online, but no microphone, no camera. Oh wait, I see a chat.
Mike, I'm trying to get hold of him. I think he's yeah.
I see. Yeah, you just said something in the chat. So presumably, at least you can hear us. So I will keep talking, and you can just communicate with the chat until you figure it out. Oh, I see a camera.
Yeah, can you please put down your camera a little bit?
It's it looks like it's on.
Yeah.
Minimize the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all working. Okay, good. So yeah, Petas, which you probably all heard of before, are sometimes left untranslated. We sometimes just use the word Peta in English. But there are other, sometimes it's translated as hungry ghost. Have you all heard hungry ghost before? As a translation of that? Yeah, do you all know where that comes from? Because it's not literal. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The word Peta does not mean hungry or have anything to do with hunger. It's a description of their state of being. And it's from Chinese, actually. The Chinese translated Peta as Egui. In Chinese, Egui. It means literally means hungry ghost. And so that was the way they were generally conceived of in Chinese Buddhism. And so we imported that. We translated that term literally into English. So that's often how you'll hear them referred to in English, the hungry ghosts, because it's a pretty good description of their condition. So yeah, they're associated with all kinds of negative mind states that are usually greed, and insatiable lust for material things is associated with that state. So let's all go to, on that cheery note, it's a very depressing realm. Not quite terrifying like hell, but just kind of sad. So let's look at the textbook here. I'll go in the chat, and I'll put it in just in case people lost the link. There's the link to the textbook. You can, or you can navigate manually to it by going to the temple's website and then going to the teaching resources page. And it should be like the first thing on that page. And today we are starting on page 289. 289. And that is the beginning of the discussion. It says chapter 3, the lower realms. Although actually, some people consider it depends how you divide it, but some also consider the animal realms to be lower as well. So we talked about animals last week as well. It's the only other realm of birth that all beings, according to the mythology, that everybody can see. Like humans can see animals, animals can see humans, we can interact readily. And of course, this is sort of arbitrary because humans are really just another type of animal. We're a specific kind of animal. But we are special in some regards, in that we have the ability for critical self-reflection. We can notice our condition and try to do things about it. So yeah, if you so any interesting questions? I'm just while everybody navigates to the page, does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts left over from last time about the animals? Interesting things that you covered or discussed you want to share?
Mike?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you mean by when you said like the animals are like regarded as a lower class?
They're considered, so in the traditional cosmology, it doesn't matter. So all the schools are different, and not everybody takes this literally, which I've said before. So Theravada cosmology usually structures it into 5 realms, right? Starting from the top being the devas, then the humans, then animals, then Petas, then Nirayas, or hell beings. So that's descending the ladder. There is a sixth category, Mahayana Buddhism adds a sixth category, and that's the asuras, or the demigods, or the sort of half gods, or whatever you want to call them. They're in all kinds of Indo-European mythology. They're not unique to Buddhism or even Indian mythology. They're in like Norse mythology or like Greek as well. So they're common all across the world. So the animals are considered to be lower than humans because they are not really capable of understanding, from the Buddhist perspective, they're not capable of understanding the Dhamma. Like animals aren't capable of understanding the teachings and putting them into practice. But in most other respects, they're not really different from humans. They still have the same needs: food, shelter, we need water, and so on. But the additional benefit of being a human is that you can understand the condition of samsara, the condition of the perpetual cycle of suffering, habitual suffering, and seek to put an end to it. The devas are considered higher than humans because of the pleasure they experience. It's much more refined and greater than us, but they are less likely to be able to put the teachings into practice, but they can understand them too. So devas are capable of understanding the truth. They just are, it's much harder for them to exercise the self-discipline needed to put it into practice. So the human and deva realms are generally considered the higher realms. And in the traditional understanding of the stages of awakening, once someone has achieved sotapatti, or stream entry, the lower realms are closed to them, and that includes up to the animal realm. So for a sotapanna, a stream enterer, or anyone above them, they can be reborn, but never lower than a human. So by that reckoning, the animals fall into the lower realms by that category. But their suffering is not very intense compared to, hungry ghosts, as we'll see.
Okay, thank you. I was just a little confused. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of arbitrary, they're all kind of low. All the realms are kind of low in one respect. Like there's suffering in all the realms. And there are various quotations in the scriptures to that effect. Even the Brahma world. Actually, this book begins with that quotation. Even the Brahma world is too low. No matter how high you go in the ladder of samsara, there's always suffering. So in that respect, they're all kind of undesirable. So page 289, the hungry ghosts. Petas. Seth, I'm just going through in order of who joined. so punching the early birds, I guess. Seth, why don't you read the first, why don't you read up to the first quotation there, where it quotes Majjhima Nikaya 82, where it says grandfathers.
Okay, let me just find it. Okay, yeah, I think. Okay. The Petas are wretched beings tormented primarily by hunger and thirst. The word Peta has been translated as ghost, hungry ghost, the departed, or afflicted spirit. A female Peta is called a Peti. The Sanskrit made a distinction between the Pitara, honored spirits of the ancestors, and the Preta, tormented ghosts. These concepts are somewhat merged in the Pali Peta. The derivation of the word is, according to the Pali English Dictionary, to be pa and e, like gone before. It may also be related to the word for father, pitar.
Pitar, yeah.
Yeah. Thus, petika means paternal, and pitamaha means ancestral.
Grandfathers. Yeah. So the mythology around them may have emerged from this kind of pre-Buddhist idea of the land of the forefathers, the sort of realm of the departed, the netherworld, the afterworld, that kind of thing. And they're not always but it's sort of nebulous, the emergence of this concept. And not everybody agrees on what the word itself actually means. It's sort of fuzzy. So what the literal meaning of the word is not totally clear. All right. Let's see here. Ovindu, why don't you read the next paragraph? Just skip to the next paragraph, taking all this into consideration, just that paragraph there.
Sure. So starting from one's ancestral domain.
Nope. Just skip to the end of this one.
Oh,
Just take all
okay.
this into consideration. The rest is all about etymology.
Taking all this into consideration, the translation of Peta by ghost is not too far off the mark. Although the state of being a Peta is considered a distinct realm of rebirth, one of the 5 Gati, Petas are associated with the ancestors and with the dead. As we shall see, the descriptions of individual Petas often portray their forms and their sufferings as closely related to the deeds of their previous existence as human beings. They are wretched, helpless shades of flesh and blood, beings that once walked upon the earth.
Fantastic. Okay, super duper spooky. Yeah, so they are in some respects comparable to ghosts, but as we can see, we will see shortly when we talk about the description, they fill the role kind of ghosts in, like, you know, if you've seen ghost movies or ghost stories and like in Western mythology, like European mythology, ghosts usually have a lot in common with their, like, they're the incorporeal and they have a lot in common physically with their earthly body, right? They might look the same as they did in life, but they're not substantial or something. But the Petas are quite different from their physical appearance is very different from human beings in the Pali mythology. Yeah, have you ever seen? There's a lot of Thai ghost movies and I guess in Southeast Asia, a lot of ghost movies. They love this subject for horror stories. I don't know if you've ever seen various depictions of Petas before. No. Okay, well, we're going to get into it a bit, and I think we might be able to find some good illustrations. They're they're spooky looking. Okay, Ovini, why don't you read the first paragraph of the description?
Yeah, sure. Individual Petas vary greatly in form, but some characteristics may be regarded as normal for this class of being as recur again and again in the descriptions. The typical Peta is naked, ugly, and stinking. He is emaciated by the long hunger, lean and prominent ribs of veins. They are hungry. They are hungry and thirsty, living off the gifts of others, very miserable, deprived, and happiness.
Okay, great. Yeah, deprived of happiness. So they are sort of. So the thing is, first of all, they have a kind of like nasty looking form. They're sort of gross and stinky, and all that stuff is very just generally off-putting. So it's unlikely that you're going to find one that looks like I think you see in a lot of like ghost stories or like, you know, that kind of thing. You'll see, ghosts of like, I saw a ghost of a beautiful young woman like in the old mansion or something. But in Pali mythology, the Petas are not going to look like, you know, some beautiful woman and lure you to a dangerous doom. Actually, they're also not really dangerous. In the canon, in the old mythology, Petas aren't dangerous. They're pitiable, and that's an important thing to remember. Although in like Thai ghost movies and stories, they can seem to be very dangerous sometimes. There's no canonical basis for that. I've not heard any stories of them like hurting people. So ghosts are scary only because they look nasty. And that's just their appearance is frightful, but they're otherwise helpless and harmless. And there's something rather to have mercy and compassion and pity for. Let's see here. Naomi, why don't you read the next paragraph?
From the Petas?
Yeah, from the Petas to the colon. You don't have to read that. There's a whole story that follows that. You don't have to read the whole story.
Okay. The Petas in one passage are said to be between 60 and 80 hatha in size. This would make them
Hatha is a hand. Hatha, by the way, is a hand. I think it's probably similar in Sinhala, right? What's the word for hand?
Hatha.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Okay, I was just making sure. I don't speak Sinhala, but I just want to make sure everybody knows what that means. Good.
This would make them gigantic in human terms, 27 to 36 meters tall. This is hard to reconcile with most of the stories which make no reference to their size and their various encounters with human beings. The Petas always sleep on their backs because they have too little flesh and blood to support any other posture. They are often called miserable denizens of Yama's world. They are normally invisible and were seen, for instance, by Moggallana only because he possessed the Dibba Kaku psychic power. However, they are on rare occasions seen by ordinary persons.
Good. Okay, excellent. So yeah, they are basically huge but spindly and weak. So like colossal, weak beings who sort of like flop around and just sort of like drag their way through existence. They are, and that's part of the reason they're not really dangerous, is because they're just too weak to do anything. They are, as it says, invisible to humans, and this squares with like Western mythology about ghosts, right? Like they, some gifted people can see them, like your mediums or whatever, and some in the canon, some of the monks develop this power, but it's not necessarily connected with their wisdom. I think we've mentioned this before. I think we've talked about the psychic powers in the mythology. They can be developed, but they are not necessary. And I think in most reformist or like modernist approaches to Buddhism, people will say that they're either agnostic about these psychic powers, saying they may or may not exist, or some people say they don't exist, but everybody agrees they don't matter. So the ability to see ghosts is not necessary to become enlightened. But some people get it in the mythology just by chance. So Moggallana is one such person. He had this ability to see the ghost and see the various realms of existence, but others do not have it. Like Sariputta couldn't at all. So it's not important. But he could see them, and there are various descriptions in the canon that he gave to other people of these beings. And the Dibba Chakku is one such power, the divine eye. Dibba being divine or radiant, and then Chakku is an eye. The Buddha himself also possessed the Dibba Chakku, but not all awakened people have it. Anyway, what follows is a story about the lay follower Sona, who saw a ghost, was super scared, and then decided to become a monk to get free of samsara because he didn't ever want to become one, not because he was afraid of being hurt or killed by one. And there's another one that follows about one of King Bimbisara's ministers, where he saw a ghost. So I think we'll skip ahead through all these specific stories, unless there's maybe a good description of one. Oh, here we go. There's on page 293, here, near the bottom, we see another example. Yeah, okay. Why don't Dilika, why don't you read the short story there? This is one of Moggallana's experiences. Another example, why don't you read that short story?
Okay, got it. Moggallana once saw a Peta buried up to his neck in a cesspit. The Peta told his story. I was a householder who supported a bhikkhu of bad character. This bhikkhu was greedy and selfish. He was attached to my household and jealous of other bhikkhus. Listening to his word, I too began to abuse the good bhikkhus. As a result of that, I am a Peta in cesspit. Moggallana asked him, what became of evil-minded bhikkhu? I am standing on his head. My food is what others defecate. The bhikkhu's lives upon what I expel. Okay,
yeah. So that's very interesting, very moralistic tale about what happens to. So the punishment for being a lay follower who treats good renunciants poorly is quite bad, but the punishment for being a bad renunciant who encourages lay people to misbehave is even worse. So this is the case of the sort of situation. So this ghost is in this unfortunate situation, and sadly for a long time. Petas have a much longer lifespan than humans, so you're usually going to be stuck in that state for a very, very long time. Now, all that said, there are other interpretations of this state and ways in which it sort of can be understood. And I think there are a lot of people who say don't believe literally in ghosts, that like they don't believe that such things literally exist. And that's fine. I think it doesn't really matter, but there are ways we can understand this state in a sort of an allegorical way as well. And that is that this state is tied deeply to greed, usually, and or disdain. So, you know, generally, like if you look down on others who have less than you, or you are avaricious and greedy for things that others have, and it's generally related to material possessions. So if you're strongly thirsting for material possessions, especially consumption of food, of good superfluous consumption of clothing, or excessive indulgence in any kind of thing. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a thing that's a vice in itself, right? It could be a thing that's all right, like food, like we all need food, but like excessive overindulgence in food, or a greed or envy for what others possess and desire. We see stories of people who, you know, undermine or hurt others to get what they have. And that generally leads to states like this. And in this very life, we see those consequences manifesting. You know, we see things like if you behave that way, you tend to isolate yourself from the world. People don't like you, and you're not going to make a lot of friends. You are going to create a kind of miasma of pain and depression and grief. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. So if you feel emotional pain and distress, and you turn to something like food, or you turn to something like drugs or alcohol to try and fill that void, it doesn't work, and two, it becomes a dependency. So we need to, like, we find the need to continue doing it, and that's the state of the Peta. Essentially, they know their state is wretched, but they can't stop doing it. They know they feed on excrement, but they need it to survive, so they can't not. And that is the state that the Peta is in. So we can experience that even now as in a human body. We can experience the way that suffering is felt to a certain extent. So that's an allegorical way we can understand the state of the Peta, even if you don't necessarily believe in spooks and ghosts. Was there another comment I wanted to add to that? No, I don't think so. But I do want to talk about the relationship between this and transference of merit. You all know what transference of merit is, right? Actually, I think we do it in the opening puja every time we, at least a little bit of it, every time we have a Sunday school, or every time we do something at the school. We start with, sometimes we have a couple of verses dedicating merit and virtue to departed ancestors and so on. And this is connected with the state of the Peta in traditional Theravada mythology. So we're going to see how that works here. Let's see here. On page 299, we're going to skip to page 299.
Hello.
Yeah.
Mike, there are two students joining from Halifax.
Oh.
Yeah. Their names are Delot and Delon. Can you pronounce your names?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Delot.
Hang on.
I'm Delon.
Okay, so this is your teacher over there, Mike. Would you mind talking to them?
Yeah, let me just hang on. I'm going to replace Spotlight. Hang on.
Oh,
there you are. Hello. I just had my camera pinned, so I couldn't see you. Nice to meet you both. You're in Halifax?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was born in Halifax. It's my hometown. So good to see you. Okay, so you're about an hour ahead of us. All right, that's good. So we're talking about all kinds of mythological stories and creatures in Buddhist folk tales and things like that. So I hope that will be interesting for you. Most of the students here are a little bit older. than you guys, but I will try to still make it interesting for you. Okay?
Okay.
You can use your microphone and talk to us and like shout out whenever you have questions or comments and you want to talk. That's cool. All right.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Now, where were we? Oh yes, Natul, I was hoping that on page 299 that you could read the first paragraph.
Okay. Traditionally, the Petas have been seen as the recipients of transferred merit. In brief, the idea is that when a meritorious deed is done by a living person with the earnest wish, may this benefit my dead relatives, the merit is received by the Petas who experience an alleviation of their suffering as a result. The transfer of merit remains integral part of lay Buddhist practice to the present day.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, so this is a common, let me spell it myself again. Here we go. So this is a very common thing among lay Buddhists like you and me in, especially in Asia. Western convert Buddhists don't tend to do this very much. I think not as much because of the way traditions are brought over, and Western philosophy doesn't think about this very much. But I think it's beneficial regardless of what you believe of the afterlife. So these kind of practices essentially are like, may my relatives or departed relatives benefit. May they, experience, may they experience alleviation of their suffering and so on. There is a mathematical reason why this should presumably benefit all Petas, this kind of wish, and that's that samsara is without beginning, right? If we count, because this is something that we started at the very beginning of the course, right? If we kind of, as the Buddha said, if you tried to go back and count all your previous lives, you would count and count and never come to the end. There's no beginning that you can find. It's just countless. So given that, he said in another place that it's almost impossible to find somebody who wasn't your mother or your brother or your father or whatever in a previous existence, that you've been through the round infinite times. So even if there are infinite beings, the relationships will configure in all kinds of ways. So when you think about who are my departed relatives, you may think to yourself, well, my grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, whoever may have already passed on in this life. You may think, well, I'm pretty sure they're not a Peta. They lived a good life. Maybe you're confident that they didn't go to the lower realms. But those aren't your only relatives. You have relatives from countless previous existences. And so all of those are also your departed relatives. And all of those Petas that are in the Peta realm are also your departed relatives, if you go back far enough. So that kind of attitude of compassion, I think, is very important. So when we dedicate merit to all of our ancestors and things like that, I think it's important to remember that all of the Petas should be included in that. It's not just a handful who's like, those are the ones that I care about. Like, it's all of them. We've been in close, loving relationships with all of them at some point, and we've been there too, if we go back far enough. So that's an important thing to bear in mind, I think. Okay. Let's see here. There is, we got all kinds of stories. I don't want to read all of them. Let's see here. Oh yes, on page 302. Skipping ahead a few more pages. Page 302. I will read this. I don't want to put our two new students right on the spot and make them read. So you can just listen. It's fine. I'll read this one. There is a. Wait, you know what? Yeah. So there is a Parita chant. There's a chant of blessings on the previous page that you often hear. It's been translated, and it's often used in the especially in different places, but in the Thai forest tradition, monks always chant this before they have their meal. It's a bunch of blessing verses. Just as water which is rained in the hills flows into the valleys, so this gift may it benefit the Petas, just like rivers fill the ocean. This gift here may it benefit the Petas, and so on. So this sutta, or selected stanzas, are often chanted by Theravada bhikkhus as an acknowledgement when offerings of food or other requisites are made by the lay people. Used in this way, it is called an anumodana, or a rejoicing. The Petavattu is a text. Petavattu is a text consisting of verses to which the commentary adds framing stories. Most of the verses and stories are about Petas, their suffering, and the actions which brought it about. In about a third of the stories, the suffering of the Peta is relieved when someone dedicates an offering to an arahant, bhikkhu, or to the sangha, or on their behalf. So we see here on a couple of pages later, on page 304, after the story, as the story illustrates, it is useless to attempt to give anything directly to a Peta. In this case, they can't, because they can't receive it. They're not capable of just grabbing it and eating it or doing anything like that. That's why if you put out a plate of food and say, come have this, nothing happens. Only the dedication of a gift given to another is effective, and one given to the Buddha, the Sangha, or an individual bhikkhu is especially potent in this regard. This has led some modern readers to a cynical view. H.S. Gaiman, in the introduction to his translation, says that basically this is a sort of self-serving, to sort of summarize, it's a sort of self-serving philosophy. Some people have said that it's a self-serving philosophy for the bhikkhus, but I think it doesn't really. The key point is not that it's a bhikkhu, but that it is a good gift given selflessly with an open heart to someone who is also good and virtuous, and between you and between the two, the giver and the recipient, that there is a wholesome spirit of love and compassion. I think if you give the gift in that spirit, then it tends to be more effective. And so if you give the gift in that spirit and say, hey, I give this to you, but also may it benefit all the beings who have less, who can't satisfy their needs, to all the Petas, then that will be a very effective wish, and then the Petas feel better because of that. We see several stories in here where the Petas feel better because of that action. Yeah, okay, all right. I think that should probably be enough for now. I'll just read the last paragraph in this chapter for us. So we're just kind of skimming through. We're not going to read everything. The text goes on to say that the last kind of, that one kind of ghost is able to receive the transferred merit. But the canon doesn't make this division, and there, in a few places where these terms are applied, it would be more it's simple to understand them as applying to Petas in general. So basically, Petas in general should be able to receive this gift. The gift of, it's the rejoicing in the giving that the Petas actually get. They can't eat the food. That's why they're hungry. But it's the act of rejoicing in generosity. The virtue itself gratifies them. So it does not indicate that the scholarly tradition represented by Melinda Panya was becoming increasingly comfortable with the idea of transferring merit. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so basically, this tradition of transferring merit has been going on for a very long time. Lay Buddhists have been doing it since the very beginning, and it's a good way to benefit. You can benefit everybody by doing it. So by, say, giving to somebody who is in need, be they the poor, be they the bhikkhus, or anybody who's in need. If you give that gift with a benevolent and happy and compassionate heart, and you add the wish, may this also benefit all the unseen beings, the Petas and so on, may they also benefit from this merit, then they will as well. And then you, by doing this action, by benefiting the person you're giving the gift to, by benefiting all the unseen beings, you yourself also benefit by making even more merit for yourself, and also developing virtuous character, developing compassion and generosity. And those are essential parts of the path of practice. So it's a very, so in that sense, the Petas are almost one of the most important realms for the lay Buddhist practitioner. think about, because devas don't need your help, and odds are they're not going to help you. Hell beings can't be helped by you, and they can't really hurt you. They're just tormented. Animals can receive some of your benefit and help. You can take care of them, you can adopt pets and animals, but the Petas need it the most. So they can be recipients of your generosity. Okay, cool. Does anybody have any comments, any questions, anything you want to share or discuss about the Petas for now?
Mike,
Mhm.
I did have one quick question.
Yeah.
Well, the part I was reading, I came across a cesspit. Do you know what a cesspit is?
Yeah, a cesspit is like a, you know what an outhouse is?
Sorry?
Do you know what an outhouse is?
No, not really.
Okay, so in the old days, they didn't have toilets and plumbing and that stuff, right? So where do you go to the washroom? You got to make a hole. You got to dig a hole and put all your excrement in the hole. So a cesspit is a hole full of poop and other refuse and other junk. Just to throw all the junk in this nasty hole. That's
Okay.
what a cesspit is.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. Yeah, so that's the state. That's the existence to which these Petas are subject. And it's said that they sort of occupy the same space as humans. It's not like when we talked about the cosmos earlier, we talked about, in traditional Indian mythology, they believe that there's Central Mountain, and then there's all these like 4 continents and all that stuff. And the devas are believed to like reside way up on the Central Mountain, and then the hell beings are in some other place. The Petas aren't confined to a specific location. They seem to be kind of like coexistent or with us, like they live in and around humans in the same space. So like it could be an actual cesspit, like a human, or they could live in a washroom or in a sewer. Like that's the kind of place where they could be, and we just like wouldn't see them according to the mythology. So they are walking the earth, so to speak, or flopping the earth with us. They just aren't perceived by humans. So that in the mythological accounts. So they're not. They don't have like a separate. There's no like ghost realm somewhere. We talk about the ghost realm, but that's just like a way of experiencing the world. So the ghosts live in the same world, physical world we do. They just see things and perceive them differently. Like there's an analogy, I think it's from Zen, that like a human, a deva would see a river and they would see it as like molten nectar of immortality, and it would just it's fragrant and beautiful. And the human would see the same river and it's like, I don't know, it's the Ganges, it's a river, right? And then the Peta would see the same thing as like a flowing morass of feces and urine and this disgusting just trench of cess and nastiness. And then the hell beings might see it as a river of fire and lava, right? It's the same physical thing. So that has been one interpretation of the meaning of the word realm. The realm is not a place so much as it's a state of mind or a perspective on things. So that's the way it's been interpreted by some.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. This is kind of a simple question. It's what's worse, a preta or a yaka?
Well, that's a good question. We're going to talk about yakas later because they're sort of a miscellaneous kind of. They don't fall into one of those 5 categories very well. So it's hard to say, actually. I think probably it would be worse to be a Peta, as we're going to see based on the descriptions. Like yakas seem to have a little more agency and control over their experience, but they have really negative impulses which tend to land them in hot water, literally. Like they will take actions it's really unstable. The yaka tends to go down to hell a lot because they get up to no good. So technically, I think the experience of being a yaka seems to be less bad a lot of the time, but not always, but it seems to be the case. But it's one of those kind of marginal ones. We're going to talk about some of those marginal creatures like yakas or asuras. They're going to come up later and we'll talk about them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so everybody, it's 3 o'clock. Let's take a quick 10-minute break. You can go to the washroom or grab a snack. Come back here at 3, let's say 3:12, and we're gonna have a little discussion and chat and that kind of thing. It's very casual. We can talk a bit more about Petas or catch up about other things. And we're just going to talk about Buddhist practice and stuff. So yeah, everybody meet back here at 3:12. That's my camera working. Yep. My camera won't turn on. Oh, it's an odd problem. Oh, there we go. Now it's back. Okay. Okay, seeing a couple people back now. Just say hi when you get back.
We're here.
Okay, great. Good.
I'm back.
Okay, all right. I think that's everybody then. All right. Awesome. I'm going to start with gonna look at. I could not find enough Peta related trivia to make a good. At least not that would be fair. Like there's all kinds of things like what is the average, like what is average lifespan of a Peta or something, but then you'd have to look like through the appendix of the book, and that wouldn't be very nice. So I just have some pictures of Peta's hungry ghosts that we can look at. I think that would be kind of fun. There's a lot of really good, especially in Chinese art. The Chinese have some excellent pictures of these hungry ghosts that we can take a quick look at here. Let's see, share screen. And we'll look at application. We'll just look at, you guys can look at it. My entire screen. There we go. Infinite recursion begins. Okay, now there we go. You should all be able to see. Everybody can see the picture, yeah? Yep. Yes. Let me know if you can't see.
Oh yeah, we can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So here we have a good picture. This is all. I think these are all Chinese. This is a painting. It's only a couple hundred years old, I think. But we see some of these. There's humans just doing their business at the well. They're or something like that. And there's actually a monk over here on the right. He's a Zen monk. You'll see he's wearing black robes because in Zen they wear black. Not all the Buddhist monks in the early days were the same color, and when China received the lineage, the Zen lineage, they wore black for some reason, and so they just kept that. So a lot of Zen monks wore black robes. But over here, you can see mixed in among them, we have all these strange creatures. This one's yellow, these ones are black, and they're like prostrating themselves and begging in this supplicating posture, like they really want the water, but they can't. It doesn't look like the people can see them. Like they can't interact with them. So they just kind of hang around places, begging for scraps and things like that. And that's sort of their state of being. So I think that's a really good picture. It sort of shows the state of the Peta. And you can see here, he's also got this distended, this big bloated stomach. And that's part of the mythology, is that the Petas have these enormous stomachs and enormous appetites, but tiny little necks and throats and like tiny mouths, and they can't possibly take in enough nutriment at once to satisfy the hunger that the huge stomach gives them. There's another one here, very similar. This one's a black Peta. It looks like he's eating probably excrement or dirt or something, trying to fill his stomach. And here we have a Peta's interaction with a monk. We see he's breathing fire here. That's because according to some mythology, Petas have fetid or poisonous breath. At least some people have, some sources say that. So it's not so much that they're hostile. See, he looks more kind of sad and depressed. The fire breath is not really because he's hostile or sad so much as it's just sort of the nature of his body, that it's sort of toxic. So some people in the past have blamed diseases and pollution, in the old days, used to blame it on Peta infestations and so on. But it doesn't seem like it's a deliberate, in the mythology, it doesn't seem like it's ever on purpose. Like the Petas do this kind of thing by accident just because they happen to be poisonous themselves. And then this last one, it's a really old manuscript, so it's very cracked and faded, but you can see he's trying to eat. It looks like a red hot ball of fire or something. He's trying to digest that and get it into his big stomach. which is a pretty terrifying image. But I mean, you know, when you're really hungry, you'll try anything, I guess. So yeah, anyway, so those are some of the pictures of Petas that, especially in Chinese art, you see a lot of these depictions. There are also, like, you'll see, I think in a couple of Thai movies, there's one horror movie I saw that I don't recommend to you. You're probably too young, but they also depict the Petas as very tall, spindly things, like as being taller than a tree, you know, and the kind of lurking in the shadows and not wanting to be seen, you know, trying to hide, but they're so big. It's kind of comical, almost, the effect. It's kind of silly. So there's all kinds of pictures like that of them, and supposedly that's the kind of thing they might look like. But the important thing about them is that the state of mind. In the mind of these creatures, they are always hungry for more, and they can't get enough. And that's because of the what they cultivated in life. In life, they practice just eating and consuming and getting all the things that they could to give them pleasure and never being satisfied. And that in turn leads them to a state where they're never satisfied. So that's the result of those kind of habits. Having bad habits, the habit of always being dissatisfied leads to more dissatisfaction. And so we have to, as Ajahn Chah said, go against the grain and kind of practice contentment without, you know, and go without and renounce things in order to find contentment here and now. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to share some of those pictures with you because they're just, I don't know, art's cool, and maybe it was just you know, inspire things, and maybe someday you can watch some horror movies. A lot of, like I said, Thai horror movies involve maybe some of you are old enough for it, but yeah, some of them involve these Petas and hungry ghosts. They're fascinated by them. It's a big part of their pop culture, is this the ghost story. Okay. So otherwise, this last little while, I guess we got about half an hour or so. Normally what we do for the students who are new, normally what we do at this time is we just chat about, we can talk about Petas if you want. We can talk about, last time we talked about animals, what it's, and the Buddhist view on animals. We can talk about that, or we can talk about your meditation practice or any other Buddhism related thing, kind of. This is the time for that. So lay it on me. What's new? What do you want to talk about? Have any of you seen any of those like Thai horror movies? Maybe that would be a good place to start. Have you ever seen one of those?
Mike?
Yeah.
I think you're still sharing your screen.
Oh, that's fine. I'll just stop that. Yeah, that's okay though. You can keep looking at the artwork. But yeah, anyone have anything you want to chat about today? Anything last time that's left over that you want to go over, or anything about your meditation practice or anything?
Well, it is a movie, but it's not like very good at Buddhism. Doctor Strange, it has like the, yes, kind of.
You know, it's funny that you would say that, Doctor Strange, because of course the main actor in that movie is who?
Doctor Strange. Where's the other?
Who plays Doctor Strange?
I forgot his name.
He's got a really long name. It's Benedict Cumberbatch. So Benedict Cumberbatch actually is a Buddhist. I don't know if you knew that, but there's the association with that movie. There is a fair amount of Buddhist. There are a lot of Buddhist themes in that movie, and it's more influenced by Tibetan Buddhism. But there are genuine Buddhist themes in the movie. And yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Doctor Strange, actually is a Buddhist. And he did a movie, he narrated a documentary a little while ago as well, about the Buddhist community, Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese monk and teacher. He's like 95, he's really old, but he's a Zen teacher. And he's got a very popular and large and successful following, and he's a meditation teacher in Vietnam. And Benedict Cumberbatch actually recently he narrated a documentary about the monks and nuns who live there. I'll try and find the name of it. And that's more directly Buddhism themed, but it has a connection to Doctor Strange, of course, because the guy who does Doctor Strange narrates it, because he actually is a Buddhist. So that's a fun trivia fact for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we go. There's a link to the trailer for the movie. I'll just send you. There you go in the chat. There's a YouTube video that's a link to the documentary, just the trailer for the documentary. Yeah, and it apparently that documentary. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I think it documents the lives of the monks and nuns who live in that community. Yeah, so that's so that's interesting that because I think I just saw that yesterday, and it's interesting to bring up because Doctor Strange is connected to that, and there is a connection to Buddhism. There's a lot of also the art, I think, in the movie, like the when he does the magic like circles and stuff. That's based on Tibetan yantras. So yantras are kind of magical sigils that they use for meditation practice, and they're often used as like an object in Theravada meditation. One of the basic objects is the kasina. So it's a disc. That's what kasina means. It's a disc. You find like a colored disc and like stare at it and then try to visualize it very clearly, and you focus on that, and that's a way to meditate. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have a similar thing with the yantra, which is a bit more complex, but it's a shape with like a bunch of geometric designs, and you have to memorize the shape and hold it in your mind and visualize it. And it's a meditation. It's a meditation technique they use. It's like a basic theme for them. So those are actually based in Buddhist yantras that are used in Tibet. So that's another cool thing there. You could learn to do that. I think in Thailand, a lot of people get them tattooed on their backs for like protection or something. They think they're magic. So I don't know. There's a bunch of like trivia facts for you about Doctor Strange. I think he's one of my sister's favorite superheroes too. So it's pretty rad. It's a good one. Yeah.
Mike, I had a quick comment.
Yeah.
It's about the petas. I don't know, but like in our Sri Lankan culture, when we talk about petas, where we like, for example, when we're like making breakfast and having like an egg, it's like one of our customs. We always throw away a little piece of the egg in the garbage, like to the petas. So I don't know if other Sri Lankans probably know it, but that's what we do, and it's directly accompanied to the petas.
That's very, very good. Yeah. Like I said, it's probably one of the most core practices, and has always been of lay Buddhist practice since the beginning days of Buddhism, I think. It's still there in that form. There's also in Chinese culture, there's a holiday specifically for the hungry ghosts, where people will go and I think they like have picnics for the ghosts. Like they go put out food and stuff. I've never seen it celebrated myself, but I've heard of it. I think that's something they do. They go basically bring up picnic baskets full of food and offer them to the ghosts on a specific. I think it's in like the fall sometimes, like late August or late September or something.
Mike, I also have a comment.
Yeah.
In Sri Lanka, in Sinhala, also the word for greedy is basically Peta kama, which translates to like Peta, basically.
Yeah. So is Peta like? Yeah, greed is Peta like. Yeah, and then that's very easy, especially for you guys. I think all of you probably speak Sinhala, right? That it's easy to draw the direct connection between the state of mind of like what happens when you practice greed and the state of mind of the Peta. Whereas it's easy to make that direct connection and see it very, very clearly. And that's something that is very, I think, hard to see for a lot of people, especially if you believe in like, if you don't believe in moderation, you don't believe in a hereafter or anything like that. A lot of people will be, especially in the West, will be very cavalier about consumption, just consuming food and it doesn't have to be food, right? The Petas are specifically connected with food a lot of the time, but the state of mind is cultivated by overconsumption of anything, any pleasure, good, so if you kind of cultivate that mind state, you're being Peta-like, right? So you can have greed in all kinds of ways, and that's not something we want to cultivate in ourselves. Yeah. The other now in Sinhala, are the other realms as represented in sort of the popular culture or the language as much? So we have Petas showing up in language about greed or in practices around eating. I know that in my household we also have some of the things when we eat. We chant some verses, some Pali verses, to dedicate the merit to the Petas as well. So we do this very similar thing. It comes from the Thai forest practice in our household. But yeah, what about the other realms? Do devas, for example, come into daily life practices in Sinhala or in the language in Sinhala very much?
Well, I mean, like, deva still means kind of the same thing. The words are all the same.
But there's no like equivalent for like deva-like, I imagine, right? Like there's no, like virtuous being deva-like or something like that.
Like another word for it, like the word for it in Sri Lanka, like Sinhalese.
Like the word is deviya, which basically means deva. It's the same, but there's no word for deva-like, I guess.
Yeah. No equivalent of like doing the opposite of Peta-like, but with the devas, for example. Yeah. There's an interesting fact that I may have mentioned with the asuras is that in Persian mythology, the word asura, or in their language ahura, means a god, while deva in Persian mythology means a demon or a devil, and it also does in English. Devil comes from deva. So and so some people have hypothesized, and I think it's really likely that the two words have opposite meanings. If you cross the river, if you cross the Sindhu or the Hindu Kush mountains, you go over the mountains, and the word has the opposite meaning. And so somebody once hypothesized that maybe there was like two tribes, and then they split up and they hated each other so much that their pantheons flipped. Like the other guys worship the Ahuras, so we're going to worship the Devas. So something like that may have happened. So in the languages of the West, they're all descended from the same language originally, but at some point that kind of meaning inverted. So in the West we talk about like devils or the devil, and that's a bad thing. But in like Indian languages, or like Hindi, or in Sinhala, the word deva it's a good thing. So it's kind of ironic that it ended up like that. But also in English, it has contradictory meanings, like divine. Divine is also from the same root. So it's sort of odd how the word came to have opposite meanings. I don't know. I think that's kind of neat.
Mike, I just thought of another movie that kind of is related to like meditation and inner peace. Kung Fu Panda, it's kind of related. Like it does say like inner peace and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Kung Fu Panda is a great movie. Delot and Dylan there. I haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, you guys have probably seen Kung Fu Panda, right?
No, we haven't seen it.
What? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, how old are you?
9.
Yeah, you're probably old enough to watch Kung Fu Panda. You should ask your parents about it. It's just about a panda bear who learns Kung Fu and learns inner peace, like Ovini said. So yeah, he learns to get peace with himself through Kung Fu. It's a pretty good movie. And it's for kids. You guys could watch it and you'd probably have fun. Because I think what other good movies are there? I think I recommended 2, I think last time to you guys, at least a couple of lessons ago, I recommended a couple of movies. There's one that I watched a lot as a kid, and that's Little Buddha, and that's a good one because it has a story of a young boy who's learning about Buddhism, and also the story of the Buddha himself and his life. So that's a good movie about Buddhism, I think, and it's like obviously directly connected with Buddhist practice. But there was another one I recommended to you last time, but I can't remember what it was. Does anybody remember what I recommended?
It was
It
like
was like
summer, spring, fall, winter,
Oh yeah.
something like
So
that.
yeah, so some of the older ones, some of the older students here might like that, but it's not really for kids. It's just slow. It's not like you can't watch it. You'd just probably be bored because it's just about a guy living in a shack, living in a hut, and him growing up there with a monk, and that's it. So there's not a lot of exciting action or kung fu or anything. But it's a good movie. It is a good movie. So yeah. But yeah, here let's I'll put some of these ones in here. Kung Fu Panda, Doctor Strange. Those are some Buddhism related movies, and then a little bit of. I don't know if it's any good. I think I'm too biased about that movie because I grew up watching it. You know, I saw it all the time, so it's part of my childhood. So I feel nostalgic when I watch it. I'm not sure it's actually a great movie. It might be. I can't tell you really. I have my own bias there. I don't have a good perspective. But yeah, so there are a fair number of good Buddhist movies out there. There are a couple of others that I can think of, but they're really more for grown-ups, and I definitely would recommend them to you guys. If I think of more though, I'll definitely list them. Especially since we're all locked inside, so we kind of what are we gonna do? We can sit inside. We can, you know, to entertain ourselves. We can read. We can play games. We can watch movies. That's it, right? So might as well have a list. But yeah, for the younger kids, especially, I didn't know you guys, the new students, you hadn't seen Kung Fu Panda. Yeah, you should definitely watch that. Actually, when I was in China, a lot of the students I had there, they didn't know that it was an American movie because they loved it so much. They thought it was a Chinese movie because they get it dubbed, you know. And I was like, oh yeah, I've seen it. They're like, oh, how come you've seen it? I'm like, it's a Western movie. What? I was like, yeah, it's an English language, like the original soundtrack is English. And they were also surprised. They're like, oh, but it's so Chinese. I'm like, yeah, it's an American movie. So yeah, they because there's unfortunately not a lot of great Chinese movies out there. Oh, there's actually there's one series. I think somebody mentioned it before. It's on Netflix, so most of you can probably watch it. And I think it's just called Buddha, and it's a Hindi language TV show about the life of the Buddha. Have you guys? I think somebody mentioned it before. Yeah, but yeah, do you know this exists?
I saw it.
Okay, good. Yeah, well now you know anyway because I've just told you. But yeah, so that's a good one. It's a Bollywood show, so it's got a very Bollywood flavor to it. But yeah, it's a TV show. It's just called Buddha, I think, and it's on Netflix. And I think it's suitable for kids. There's nothing, you know, that can't be in there. Like there's not a lot of really terrible violence or anything. Yeah, so that's a pretty good show. If you like Hindi movies or like Bollywood stuff, you got to read the subtitles. So you know, if you're not a fast reader, then it might be hard. But it's a good show too if you want to watch that. Actually, the author of the book, our textbook, he watched it before me, and he recommended it to me. So he was I think my first meditation teacher, really, and he watched it and told me, yeah, you should. It's a good show. You should give it a watch. So I'm passing that recommendation on.
Mike, I have a quick question. It's about time in Buddhism.
Yeah.
So I know that like time in higher realms and lower realms is longer than human time. Like 1 day in Niraya or 1 day in like a higher realm is like a few months here. Mm-hmm. And also I asked my mom about it, like if being in a lower realm had like to spend 1 day in their realm, would they feel like it was 1 day, or would they experience it as like time in the human realm? Like would they feel it over a course of months?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So from their perspective, how is it? Yeah. So like if it's like Narnia, right? Like you guys have all seen like or read the Narnia books, right? Like if you go to Narnia, time is blurry. So if you go into the closet and go to Narnia and come out, you might have been gone for 20 minutes, or maybe you've been gone for a year and you can't tell what it's going to be. So yeah, it's sort of like that. Maybe you experience it as being so you feel like you're alive for 100 years, and then you come back as a human, but that time has actually been 1,000 years or something. And then yeah, maybe I'm not sure. I think that is one of those more detailed things that we didn't dive into too much in the textbook. I think it's in here though, because but I didn't want to bog you all down with it, and honestly I find it kind of confusing too. It's a really good question, and I have to say I don't really know the answer, so I'm sort of stumped. But there's a let me see here, Brahmaloka. Yeah, if we look through, you're likely to find an answer in the textbook in the if you want to dig through there in the section on the Brahmas, because they have very long lives, very, very long, like billions of years. So they might be the textbook might go into it there. But I think generally if I've never seen anybody answer that. There might be a thing in the old scriptures where it says, this is 100 years to them, but to us on earth, it's 1,000 or something. It's not clear how they experience it. It might be that they have the same experience of time as we do, but it just takes a lot longer. Like, their bedtime's way later. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yeah.
I think there's some oddities, like at the higher levels, because in the Brahma realms at the very, very top, the experience of being up there in that kind of, it's not even heaven, it's like beyond heaven, right? And in that state, it's like you're in constant meditation. And I don't know if any of you have been like practicing meditation and sort of lost track of time. Like you're sitting there and you're just focusing on one thing, and you think, all right, I'm sitting here, I'm counting my breathing or whatever, and then the bell rings and your meditation's done. You're like, oh wow, that was 45 minutes, that was an hour or whatever. I think that's probably sort of how it might work if we kind of stretch the metaphor, right? So it's supposed to be like a constant state of meditation. So it might be like they have some sense of time, but it's sort of flying by for them and they don't really notice it. I think that's my own guess, my own opinion. I don't have any scriptural authority to back that up. But if you compare it to a meditative experience, I think it makes a bit of sense.
Because I was thinking about it, and there was like two possibilities. One where they would experience time as the same as humans, which would be confusing because then we could just number their days by human days instead of like a confusing system where their days are equal to like 100 of ours, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there's also the other possibility where their days are actually like they actually feel like one day is passed when 100 of ours has passed. And in that possibility, like I guess the suffering for them isn't as long as we thought it would be, because then if they were destined to suffer for like 1,000 years, that would only be like 10 days for them. So it's pretty confusing.
Yeah. So the length of time, like, so for example, for a hell being, because hell beings have, or ghosts have longer lives than people, like in the although I don't think we've come across a specific ratio, exactly how much, but yeah, ghosts live longer than people. But the question is, does that feel longer to a ghost, or does it feel like the same time? Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it sort of might be blurry. I don't know if there's a fixed rule for it, but I think one of the key things about counting the time, like the days as being different, is that the way, like, the devas aren't supposed to live in our world. Like, they're not supposed to live on earth with us. And the myths say the devas live in another place, like physically in a different place. So it's like the way they reckon time might be different, but the way they experience or feel time might be the same. So that's possible. It's possible that they both align. And that's, I think, the first possibility that you mentioned, right? Is that so they might be counting time differently, like they have their own sun or something, or star, or way of counting time going by, but it doesn't line up with ours, but they feel time going at the same rate. But I think there's another possibility or important thing to consider, and that's while you as a human are alive, even in this life, like while we're alive now, the way we feel time is not constant. So
different people.
Yeah, like
differently.
Yeah, different people feel it differently at different situations. Like, and we all know what it's like to, play 10 minutes of a game or watch 10 minutes of TV. But if I told you to like sit and watch paint dry for 10 minutes, that feels way longer. Like, okay, here's some paint, go watch the wall for like 10 minutes. You're gonna be like, that's a long time. But if you're playing a game, it just, boom, it's gone, right? And so I think that might be also something to consider. Is it like it could be the way that we, so even though we're humans and we're all reckoning time in the same way, like I'm counting time, reckoning, counting, right? So I'm counting a day when you count a day, but my feeling of how fast the day goes could be different from yours. And this also changes as you get older because of your memory. So the more memories you have, the faster time seems to go by. So because devas and Petas remember their human lives, according to the stories. So they have a lot more memory already. So they might actually feel like it's going a lot faster, even if so that could be part of it. So maybe they do actually, maybe that's a possibility too, as you said. They feel like it's going by quicker. They have a longer life and more memory that even goes back to previous lives. So maybe it does, even though it hurts a lot or whatever, or it feels good, maybe it just whips by. Yeah, could be the case. I don't think there's a really good answer in the scriptures somewhere. I don't think there's a mathematical answer to your question or like an absolute yes or no, but it's an interesting thing to consider, especially since it maybe points us to our own way of feeling time. Like, hey, I feel time flies when I'm having fun, or when I'm suffering, it feels like it's lasting forever, or something like that. And I find that in meditation, time tends to go by quickly. It tends to fly by. But I think but when beginners sometimes feel like meditation is, this is taking forever. How long have I been here? Holy cow, But as you get more practice and it feels good, it tends to just fly past and you don't really feel like you're working at it the whole time. It's maybe a bit like another skill, like the guitar. If you're playing the guitar, if you're a beginner playing the guitar for 10 minutes, it's like, holy cow, my fingers hurt. And this is like a lot of work. But then if you're quite good playing the guitar for 10 minutes, it's your warm up. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about is your own perspective, as opposed to the counting of time is definitely important. And even while we live a human life, we can stretch or squish that feeling of how long things take. So maybe the moral of the story is if you're sitting at the train station and you're bored, do some meditation and the train will come faster.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a really clean answer to your question, but it's like a really good one. And I think contemplate it. Contemplate the way you experience time. You'll figure it.
I have a question. It's like, so the Buddha attained Nibbana. So like, how do we know that the Buddha attained Nibbana? Like, how?
It's a good question. Yeah, like how do you know he's not just like lying?
Yeah. No. Well, we do know that he did, but like, how do we know that he did? It's kind of confusing to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, okay, so there's a couple of possibilities, right? Like, I think one, because clearly somebody's saying that he did, right? So either he didn't say it and somebody else said it for him. He said it, but he was lying. He said it and it was the truth, or he didn't exist at all and someone made it up. I think that's unlikely. There's a lot of historical evidence to suggest Buddhism came from one person. So it leaves us with basically someone else putting words in his mouth. I think people do that a lot. People make up stuff and say the Buddha said it. It's been happening for thousands of years. But I don't think the Buddha would have taught with such confidence. And it's pretty clear, I think, that he found the answer to his question, and he didn't. I think it's right there in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which is the first discourse, the first teaching the Buddha gave. And it's like all schools of Buddhism have this one discourse. It's like the first one that exists, and everybody shares it. And in it, he says, while I wasn't enlightened, I didn't teach this. And then when I figured it out, I did teach it. So I'm not like, so there was a change. He definitely had a very specific experience. But in terms of like taking someone else's word for it, I don't think we necessarily should. Like, how do you know if someone comes up and says, oh yeah, I had this experience and this is the way I see the world? You can't know. It's a kind of philosophical problem. Like, it's also the same way, you know, you don't really know that another person is alive or experiencing the world, right? Like, you know, if I poke you and you go, ow, I assume that I've caused you pain and suffering, because if I get poked, I go, ow. But I don't really know. I don't really know, oh yeah, you are a being with all the parts and you have your own rich inner world and you experience the world and have sufferings and hopes and dreams. As far as we can tell, everything else is, you could just be like a robot that behaves like me. I don't actually know. You can't. And it's the same with the experience of Nibbana. You can't prove it to another person. You can only prove it to yourself. And this is, I think, part of why the Buddha emphasized this direct approach. Like, he didn't spend a lot of time describing what Nibbana was or what it was like, because I think it was unhelpful. You know, like if he would spend a lot of time describing what it was or it was like, it wouldn't even prove to other people that he'd achieved it, or even if it did, it wouldn't prove to them why it mattered. What's important is that they see it themselves. They have to experience it themselves to prove that it exists, and to and once you've proven that it exists, to know what it's like. So I don't think we can really know for sure that someone else has achieved Nibbana. The only person that you can ever prove has achieved Nibbana is you. You have to do it yourself. You got to go the whole way and be like, am I still suffering? And then at some point there's a tip over, a very specific moment where the last suffering drops away, like it collapses. And then you'll know, this is it. It's unmistakable when you get there, and you'll go, yeah, this is the final, no more suffering here. We're all happy, we're good, there's no problems. And only you can know that about yourself, I think. So that's why it's important. I think that's why you have the Buddha talking about a lot when he discusses how, like, valid knowledge, like the way to learn something, really learn it, is through your own direct experience. You have to, that's the famous Kalama Sutta, the discourse to the Kalamas, when he says, how do you know that something is the right path? He's like, when you do it and it works, then you know. You shouldn't even take my word for it. You know, it's not just because the Buddha said it or whatever. So yeah, that would be my answer to your question, is we don't know that the Buddha achieved it, but we can know if we've achieved it. And up to that point, until you see it for the first time, like Sotapati, when you achieve stream entry, the first moment when you like, here we go. That's what no suffering is like. That's what it's like to be just happy and no suffering and at total peace. Not just kind of like, I feel pretty relaxed today. It's a different thing. Like I feel pretty relaxed versus like, this is genuine peace. And when you reach that, you will have total unfailing confidence. And then you kind of don't need, it doesn't matter if the Buddha's achieved it or not, because you know you can do it. So I think that's the important point when you cross over.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a really good question. Huh?
I have a question. How did the prayer start?
Hang on, I'm just going to spotlight you. Say that again.
How did the prayer start?
The prayers, like Buddhist prayers?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the first ones were when people would go to the Buddha, and they would ask him, because he was a really virtuous person. He was a very good person, and people would go to him and they would ask for advice, or they would give him a gift, food or something. They would say, hey, I see you need food, here's some food. And then in return, he would bless them. He would say, well, may you be happy. I want you to be happy. I wish that you are happy always. I wish that you are healthy always. I wish that you and all your relatives find peace. And that's, I think, where the prayers started. The Buddha would pray for other people. He would say wishes for other people to be happy and for them to be at peace and to be wise. And I think that his followers, he taught the other monks to do the same and the lay people to do the same. And that's where we started as Buddhists. We started learning to pray from that, and that's kind of how it started. Yeah,
Thank you.
good question. You're welcome. Well, that's about that. There we go. Yeah, you're welcome. It's a good question. Mhm.
I have another question, just a really quick question. So, when the Buddha attains Nibbana, or like anybody attains Nibbana, so like their soul doesn't go, like, does it stay in the body and die, or does it like come into dust and go into stars, or is there just no such thing as soul?
It wasn't there to begin with. There was no soul. And the Buddha, actually, people asked this question of the Buddha himself, and he explained it basically that way. They said, well, what happens to the essence of the Buddha or the Arhat when they achieve awakening or when they die? Is it gone? Is it like when the Buddha passes away, what happens to him then? And the Buddha said, this is the wrong understanding, because there wasn't anything called the Buddha to start with. Like, it's just a word we put on a person that is also not a thing, right? So the awakening is an understanding of something that's already true. It's not really a change in what's there. So like, we have the five aggregates, we have our body, we have our memories, our thoughts, our feelings, and our mind itself. And all these things, when awakening is achieved, it's not like the body just goes and disappears, right? Or the thoughts stop. That's not what happens, because then, obviously you can still think and you still have feelings and you still have a body, because the Buddha taught for 40 years after he achieved awakening. Like, none of those things stop working. All those parts are still moving. But what happens is there is this, for ordinary beings, we tend to believe that some part of that whole process is what we are. And that's not true. And there are different levels that we do this. Like, maybe some people feel, I think most of the time people think they are this, there's a mental chatter we have. Like, there's kind of a narrator or a bunch of pictures going through our mind, and we hear these sounds or we see those pictures and we think, this story, this movie, or this chatter is me. And when I achieve enlightenment, this will stop. But that's not true, because that was never you. So those don't need to stop. You just need to recognize that that's not you. And at a deeper level, we also feel we are our bodies. And then at an even deeper level, we feel like we are the center of our minds. I'm just speaking from my own experience here. This is not the way the scriptures lay it out exactly. But if you kind of probe it in meditation, you find that there's like deeper layers of feeling like a something, like I am this. And I think at the deepest layer, we feel like there's a center of the world. Like, there's a place in the world where it's like, this is the middle of everything, and it's me. I'm the most important thing, and like everything around me is in relation to me. Like, it's a physical place, like a point. Like, if I say, how far is that from me? Or am I getting this, or am I giving this? There's a place in your mind, like a physical spot, and that's the root of it, where you feel like, this is where I am, and everything, the body is around me, this is my body, these are my thoughts that are happening, swirling around this me. The difference is that thing doesn't exist. That point, that's not real. We just imagine it. And so what happens is we let go of the idea of that point, that center of the universe, that's I. We let go of that idea and it disappears because it was never there. But then what's left is all the other things that were there, like our body and our thoughts, and those things are all still there, but we don't feel that they belong to us. And so when that center of I, me, mine disappears, then everything's normal. But there's no I, and there's no suffering. So that's the distinctive moment.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm correct, there's no such thing as soul, and there's no such thing as me. We're just basically living things.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of processes happening. Like, yeah, like thinking, the process of thinking is happening. The body as a process is happening. And those are there for sure. And we don't have to destroy them. We don't have to put an end to them. But we do need to recognize that they're not what we are, and we need to let go of them. Not destroy them, because destroying them is one extreme. Gratifying them, doing whatever they say is another. And the middle is just letting them go. That's the middle path.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Awesome. All right. I think we're just about at the end of our lesson for today. Bhante, Chandima, I don't know if there's any other items, things you want to mention before we leave, before we say the closing chant. Oh, let me see. Add spotlight. Here we go.
Someone has more questions?
I don't think so, unless.
Okay, I'm sort of like typing the Pali Gathas for those who, the Chattamanu Gatha. For the new two to reside in the chat. They can hear. Hopefully, they got it.
Okay. There we go.
So
yeah, I see.
So Mike, today you've been covering Petas.
Yeah, today we talked about Petas, and then in our chat we talked a little bit about various things, like recommended some movies that have Buddhist themes in them, or especially for the younger students, and we talked a little bit about time and that kind of thing.
I don't know whether Delot and Delon, as well as Nethel, sort of understood a little bit of what we've been talking today. I think they are new, but I guess they.
There's we talked about a bunch of stuff, and some of it's very I think easy even for the younger students, and some of it's more complicated, like understanding time from the Buddhist perspective.
Because in order for them to come back again for the class, I'm just wondering, is this Delot on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what he's been talking today? Any idea about?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we talked about ghosts, some movies, and I think some of the other stuff would be too hard.
What about if you can send the book? I don't know whether it is too deep for him.
I think
What
so.
is your recommendation,
yes.
Mike?
So I think for students under maybe like 12, I think this class is definitely going to be too complicated. And that was because everybody who we have in the classes is a little bit older. So unless you're very precocious, I think this is going to be too much.
What if we ask Dylan? Yeah, what do you think about the ghost?
I didn't understand what you said.
No, I mean he's talking about the ghost in the Buddhist teachings in Buddhism. So do you have any thoughts about ghosts in general? No idea? Okay. Hopefully they are not spooky, scary.
That's okay. Well, what we learned today is that ghosts can't hurt you, and that they are really just sad and lonely and hungry, and that you should pray and wish them that they're happy, right? So that's what we did talk about with ghosts.
Delot, I hope that you can continue to come, because I don't think you can get into this just in one day, because this is sort of a class. So I can see that there are other kids, I guess, in your same age too, I guess. So if you can come a few times, and you can get a sense of that. So don't worry about it, okay?
Okay.
Nethel?
Yes.
What are your thoughts? Able to learn something new about this subject, or you have any questions?
I understand it.
You understand it? What do you understand?
That there's Peta, and they can't hurt you. And they have a small necks, and they have a big tummy, so it's hard for them to eat.
Okay. Well, he recognizes them, huh?
Yeah. But we looked at some pictures too as well in Chinese art of the Petas and stuff. So I think that helps. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, is there a way? I think these subjects, like what I did that day, animal kingdom, today Petas. I guess next day it is about demons. Is it about?
Yeah, I think we have. Today we talked about the Petas and a little bit about transfer of merit because we do that a lot.
Okay, so what if they have questions in the meantime? Like some questions they come up, when they are, spending their time about this. Is there a way we can continue, like not as a video like this? I mean,
like
why
an
don't we
ongoing
create a blog
chat.
or something for them to ask questions or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Or
It,
maybe
right?
I'm hesitant to recommend a Facebook group because I don't have Facebook. But
No,
there's
I mean a blog, like our website. Um, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll see
sometimes when you can write, answers to their questions. Who are the Petas in Buddhism, right? What is the general perception? Can they harm us? So, like direct answers, kind of a thread or something.
Yep. Yeah. We could. Yeah, we'll think about a good format for that. I think.
Yeah.
And
No
also
hurry.
we can.
No hurry. We'll take time, but yeah. Okay, Mike. So I think there are no more questions. So the next day is gonna be January 17th.
Correct. And yes, we're talking about niraya or hell or the experience, the actions that lead to that experience. That's specifically what we're talking about next.
Okay, children. Thank you. So please stand up and then put your palms together to say the Chattamana Kagata. I think that's everything. Okay.
Okay.
Please take care. Continue to take care of you.
Thank you. Hamadune.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, thank you, Mike.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you again.